Hello, everyone. We'll just wait for a few minutes for people to come trickling in. And while we're waiting, I do have a nice fun poll for everyone to get us pumped up for this topic. So go ahead and take the poll. Feel free to say hello in the chat as well. Tell us where you're coming in from. All right. I see we've got someone from Florida, California, Texas, nice. Pennsylvania, Maryland. I'll just do a little bit of housekeeping on the chat. If you notice when you're sending a message in chat, it'll say to, and make sure you change that from hosts and panelists to everyone if you want to chat with everyone, or if you just want to send the hosts and panelists a direct message, you can change it to hosts and panelists. I see some results coming in from the poll. I'm actually quite surprised by how many people know all of the above. So let's keep answering that poll question so we can get a good gauge for everyone's knowledge.
While you guys are answering that, if this is your first time with us, thank you for joining. This is our monthly 2025 action team call. And when we say 2025 action team, basically what we mean is that we are a group of human beings who care about community, who care about people and pets, believe in collective action, and believe that together we can create change for the pets in our community by talking to fellow community members and really connecting on this common goal and needs. And together, we're really working towards, honestly, just ending the killing of cats and dogs in shelters by 2025. So that's why we call ourselves the 2025 Action Team. How do you think we're doing on this poll, Keiko? Do you think we should close it down and get started?
End it and get started, yes.
Excellent.
So we'll go ahead and end the poll.
Excited by the results.
All right, everyone see that? We, of course, have quite a few people that know their federal level, but I'm very impressed by all of the above. So that's pretty cool, guys. And then we will get started on why these different levels are important in just a little bit. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Caitlin to do some short intros. If you do have any questions, I encourage everyone to put them in the Q&A box. While we do see questions in the chat every once in a while, it's much easier to see them in the Q&A box so that they don't get buried under conversations, which we encourage. So with that, Caitlin, thank you.
Thanks, Keiko. So I'm Caitlin Simmons. I am our Senior Manager of Grassroots Advocacy. Tonight, we're going to talk about something that tends to make people's eye twitch and we get a lot of questions about, which is pets and politics. We hear pretty often that we should stay out of politics and that is not our lane and we should focus on pets. So what we'd like to talk about tonight is a little bit about why we talk about politics, what that means for us, what that means for you, and how the decisions that we make as advocates impact animals. And specifically cats and dogs in shelters. So I would like to introduce you to our expert guests, and I'm going to let them tell you just a little bit about themselves. And let's get started with Eric.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Caitlin. I'm Eric Swafford. I'm the Senior Manager of Campaign Strategy here at Best Friends. I'm a former state representative. I'm a former state legislator from the state of Tennessee. I served 3 terms in the state house, was a caucus chairman, and since then, that previous life, as I call it, from many years ago, I've spent time walking the halls and advocating for animals for about the last 10 years, and have worked literally from one end of the country to the other, talking to state legislators, federal legislators, and local officials about how their policies are impacting the animals and the pets that we love so much.
Thank you, Eric. Laura, how about you? Give us a little background.
Hey everyone, Laura Donahue. I live in Austin, Texas, but I first got hooked on how politics could shape communities when I was very blessed to work for 2 incredibly strong women, one in the State House of Maryland and one in the United States Senate. I was really excited to have the opportunity to intern for former U.S. Senator Barbara Mikulski. She's the first woman elected to the United States Senate in her own right. So first woman that didn't inherit it from a dead husband. And she had her master's in social work, and she was an organizer, and she organized her community and decided she wanted to really shape the laws that that could really live into perpetuity. And so when I working for her, I just was so inspired and got the bug. Then I was served as a legislative director for this amazing woman named Salima Seiler Marriott. She has now retired, but she served several terms in the State House in Baltimore, Maryland, and she had her doctorate in social work. And she also saw her way of social organizing as serving in the State House and shaping laws. So it was working for those 2 women that made me realize that I didn't just want to work in the crisis. Of course, we do that too. We help and don't turn away from people and animals that need help today, but that I really wanted to work upstream and find solutions that could solve the problems that really afflicted a whole community. So that's how I got my bug to work here.
I love that. I love that idea of like working upstream. So Keiko, you guys probably have seen her if you've been on any of our calls. She is on our grassroots team, but she also, has a former life before Best Friends and Advocacy. So Keiko, do you want to tell us about your background?
Sure. So I am, like Caitlin said, I'm the digital organizing manager here. I've been here for, well, end of January, I'll be coming up on my first year. So I'm very excited to still be here, still advocating on part of the animals and the people that love them. But I actually got my start in association advocacy, so very issue-based advocacy around mental health and mental health professions. But it allowed me to really cultivate a lot of skills with digital organizing volunteers, using a lot of our digital resources in order to activate our advocates and help them pursue advocacy in a way that was approachable to them, allowed them to not spend, hours out of their day trying to figure out what's what, but being able to understand that this trusted voice that speaks for this issue is able to give them a good idea of what's going on at different levels of government. But both my experience is both in state government and in federal government. So I can understand the pros and cons of both. And with that, should we go into our first question? Yeah. All right. So we'll start with this question, and of course, our panelists, both Laura and Eric, feel free to add in if you have any answers to a question that I may not direct towards you, but feel free to keep this nice and conversational and casual like we like. So we'll start off with why we're even talking about politics, Eric. So what does politics have to do with pets? How does being heard through advocacy initiatives help pets? And that's
That is a great question. And first of all, when we think of politics, everybody thinks of political races and arguing back and forth between Democrats and Republicans and the commercials we see on TV. But when we really talk about politics, we need to think just what does the word actually mean? And politics is the art or science concerned with guiding or influencing governmental policy. So what does that have to do with pets? Everything. I've heard people say, time and time again over the years, oh, I hate politics. I just want to help animals. And I have to say, okay, I get that you may not like it. However, you need to learn to deal with it. And then you actually learn to love it because of what it can actually do. We talk about what it can do for animals, and we talk about specifically pets in shelters. The vast majority of shelters in America are either government owned and operated, or they're private shelters that operate under a government contract. So when we're talking about the animals in those shelters, if we're going to affect change, it's going to be through politics, because that's literally the way that these things are governed. It's the way that they're designed. So we have to look at this thing and think, okay, we have to think politically, because at the end of the day, it's politicians and bureaucrats that are setting the policies that are impacting the animals in the shelters. When we see things that come up, like breed-specific legislation that forces animals to be killed, when we see things like individuals being forced to literally round up every cat that they see, rather than having community cat programs, those policies are put in place by politicians. So we have to think politically. But there is some good news when it comes to politics and pets and what we do. Like I said, when we think politics, we think of the infighting and the commercials, and especially this time of year. I mean, you can't turn on the TV or the radio without hearing somebody getting bashed for this or bashed for that. But I've talked to, I'll say thousands, and the number's probably tens of thousands of legislators. And there's one thing that I tell all the time that we can all agree on. And the first thing you say is, look, I know an issue we can all agree on, and people look at you like you're crazy, and their eyes start twitching. So, I can't find anybody that thinks it's a good use of tax dollars to pay people to go around, round up healthy, treatable dogs or cats, put them in a government-funded, taxpayer-paid-for facility, pay for them to be held the stray hole, and then pay somebody else to kill them. Nobody thinks that's a good use of tax dollars. No politician can defend that. So it's our job to become political, to start thinking politically, to make those contacts, to understand that is the realm that we need to be in. That is the arena we have every right to be in. It's the arena that we need to be in so that we can affect the policies and make the changes that lead to life saving of animals. And again, nobody thinks it's a good thing for a perfectly good dog or cat to be killed for no reason. And in this political climate, when all the infighting there is, to be able to step forward and get in that arena with policies that everybody can agree on, that's good for people, that's good for animals, that's good for communities, it's kind of refreshing. And it's amazing how many legislators, when we really start talking about it in that manner, it's amazing how many legislators kind of start dropping that shield. They start tearing down that wall. And some that 3 minutes earlier wouldn't hardly speak, they'll start telling you about their dog or their cat, or a story about their pet, or their little boy's pet, or their little girl's pet, or well, you ought to talk to my wife, or you ought to talk to my husband, or it's just amazing and so refreshing, especially in this climate. So when you think, oh, I don't like politics, well, maybe we really do.
That's really great. And I think, we've all experienced that as far as you start talking about pets and then that whole conversation is about so-and-so's dog, so-and-so's cat. It definitely helps keep that conversation friendly and flowing. Sometimes we do get questions about whether or not Best Friends is a liberal organization or a Republican organization or a Democratic organization. What do you have to say to that, Eric?
That's great because I tell people, look, our issues are completely nonpartisan. That's why everybody can agree on them. It's something that everybody can agree with. And, if you look at our staff, and I tell people this all the time, you look at our staff, our members, our advocates, our supporters, when you look at them, we're just like Everytown USA. We've got Democrats, we've got Republicans, we've got independents, and it really doesn't matter because we can all agree that we can do better for people and pets. And again, I've met lots of people and I meet lots of people all the time and lots of public officials and lots of legislators. I've never found somebody that says, no, I disagree with you. I think we need to kill more dogs and cats in shelters. That person doesn't exist. And so when we talk about these things, and it's again, it's easy for people to okay, I'm going to see if Eric Swafford's a Democrat or Republican. It's pretty easy to find me. I happen to be a Republican. I've got great friends on both sides of the aisle, and just this past legislative session, I think about we had very similar bills in Texas and in Florida. And in Florida, one was led by a Republican. In Texas, the lead sponsor happened to be a Democrat. In both states, the first co-sponsor was of the opposite party. Now, how great is that? How great is that we can find ways to bring people together? And, I hate to, just go on and on, but, and when you look at that, then you start looking at the other things that we impact, because you get people to start talking to one another. You get people to find common ground, to find something that they can all agree on, find the good and praise it. And that's when good public policy starts being implemented. That's when things get better for people and for pets.
Thank you, Eric. I think that's so important to talk about as an organization, like where we stand and in relation to our issues, which leads us into our next question. As you guys know, we have a group of tenacious, caring, compassionate advocates on the call tonight. And we get a lot of questions from them about issues that are near and dear to them, that they work on in their local communities, ranging from factory farming to animal cruelty. And so for this one, Laura, can you go into a little bit what issues Best Friends works on and why we focus on those issues?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, we have made as a country so much progress in animal sheltering. What was it? 17 million cats and dogs were killed in America's shelters in the 80s. And last year, 355,000 cats and dogs were killed because they didn't have a home. And that's far too many. That's why we have our mission. That's why we're focused on 2025 and we're doubling down like never before. But we have made incredible progress. That said, Best Friends is very unique and it's a very special organization. And that's why I love this organization. We are the only national organization working to exclusively end the killing of dogs and cats in our shelters. We're it. And that laser focused mission allows us to really drill down very deeply at the local level, which is where these decisions are happening. If we didn't stay focused on our mission, we would become very diluted. That said, we love all the national groups. We are partners with them. We work in coalitions together, and we don't hesitate to lend our support in the capitals, whether it's our lobbyists or sending a letter of support. But Best Friends has this very special mission, and we're the only organization working on it. So we let others lead in other policy areas. And towards the question of, so what does that mean we work on? If the policy affects the killing of cats and dogs in America's shelters, we're working on it. We know that obviously we're a very data-driven organization. We don't like to guess. I talked about the stream. We like to work upstream, and we find data that tells us what species are coming down the stream. Why are they being surrendered? And so we are very data-driven in our policy work as well. We know that 2 to 1, sometimes more than 2 to 1, cats are dying in shelters. Even though they're entering shelters at a disproportionately lower rate, they are twice as likely, and like I said, in some areas of the country, more than twice as likely to be killed in a shelter. So we know we have to solve for cats. That's why we're working on TNVR. That's why we are working at the very local level to remove barriers to implement community cat programs. We know that as it relates to the gap for dogs, we know it's big dogs. We know it's dogs of the bigger breeds. We know that the #1 reason nationwide that people report surrendering their animals is housing barriers. That's why we're working to end housing barriers. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. Obviously, we're able to do it because of the amazing people on this call, because our team is very small. So the work that is really powered by everyone on this call today, but we got to stay focused on this mission. It is a special one. I know everyone agrees, and that's why they're here. But make no mistake about it. We lift up and support our partners that are working on all the other animals and all the other ways that animals come into harm.
Thanks, Laura. I think that's a really important point about supporting other organizations, but also having a very driven mission so that we all have our own focus areas so that we can all tackle this problem, all of these problems together. But with that, I would like to ask, maybe back it up a little bit, ask a very basic question. Eric, what is advocacy? And why does Best Friends have a whole department for it?
Well, good question. Well, advocacy is public support for or recommendation of a particular cause or policy. And why does Best Friends have an entire department for it? Because we need people talking about policy, making recommendation. We need public support. I said I've been an elected official. I've been a legislator. And the one thing that I can tell you legislators do is they listen to their constituents. We may not think they do, but trust me, they do. When voters start talking to them, when voters start calling, when voters start emailing, when voters start stopping them at the grocery store or at the ballpark and talking to them about an issue, they listen. We need people talking about policies that impact dogs and cats in shelters. That's how we affect change. We say, we have a whole department for it, and you can, all those on the call can almost see our entire department. There's just not that many of us, but with each and every one of you and the thousands of people out there just like you, talking to public officials, whether it's, at the federal level, the state level, or most importantly, at the local level, that's how we impact change. It's needed, it's necessary. The only way that we are going to eliminate barriers is if we change the policies. Most of the animals go into shelters and don't come out because of the policies that drive them to be there in the first place. And the only way we're going to change it, the only way we're going to save those animals is by us advocating for them, by making people understand that policies have to change.
I love that. That's so important. And for me, my favorite thing to hear is like inspiring stories, right? So like people can talk to me all day long, but I'm like, okay, but like, I'm a little distrustful. So I want to hear like real life examples. I know, right? Me? about like how regular people like me have created change. And so I'm going to kind of open the floor for anybody who wants to kind of give a story that stayed with them, that maybe has driven you in this work, or when you're feeling down and like can't do it anymore, like what has picked you back up and made you realize like this is where it's at.
I can go ahead and start. I feel like this is a recent story that happened, in my work here. So it's very pertinent to just loving our advocate base and how quickly they can get things to go viral and, really organized to get something done overnight if they really put their minds to it. We had a network partner, another shelter, that was struggling with a breed ban in Minot, North Dakota. And with that, they were having a lot of problems because they had, of course, pit bulls and other banned breeds coming into their shelter. And they wanted to end this breed ban because it obviously causes a problem if they have a banned breed within their shelter. And so they, using our platform for digital organizing, overnight, they got over 3,000 signatures on their petition to end this breed ban in Minot, North Dakota, which, Caitlin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was the last holdout in North Dakota for that breed ban. But they got 3,000 signatures overnight, and then only a couple weeks later, the city council passed or repealed the breed ban, and they effected that change just by themselves, by word of mouth, by collecting signatures, by showing the city council that nobody wants this breed ban. And that's the power of word of mouth and advocacy happening in a way that is organized around an issue. And we're able to present that to legislators so that they can see, the consensus is we should not have a breed ban in Minot, North Dakota. So I would say that is one of my star moments of just thinking about our advocate base and how easily they can affect change in, once they hit that stream of power when it comes to getting all of those signatures. And it just was an avalanche of actions after that, with the city council passing, or rather repealing, that breed ban.
I love that. That's important. Showing that you can build that power and really create change when they were resistant. They didn't want to repeal that ban, but they did it because their community really pressured them on that. Eric or Laura, do you have any particularly favorite stories?
I've got one I'll share. I have a lot, but one I'll share. You all know, Caitlin, especially you, we've been really struggling over in Robeson County, North Carolina. And I went over there to try to meet with the Board of Health after sending a few emails, and they didn't respond to me. They don't know me. Went over and during public comment section of one of their meetings, I spoke about all the things that we would like to try to do to help them, help their county, provide resources, etc. And literally when I got finished, no one spoke to me. When it was over, no one spoke to me, didn't shake my hand, didn't even acknowledge my existence, that I was there. But I thanked them. I sent follow-up emails and phone calls. Then the grassroots team happened to go over there, did some tabling at a community event, had some little nice postcards that thanked the Board of Health members for their service to their community, and asked them to start working with Best Friends to bring resources to help the dogs and cats in the shelter. And after just a couple of hundred postcards got sent to them, they started returning my emails. They started returning my phone calls. We began working with them. We have since had some transports of animals out of that facility. We're in communication with them about changing their vaccine protocols. And the biggest thing is now they're communicating with us. They understand that the people in their community want this. The people in their community care. They didn't really care what I said. They didn't care if I was there or not. They would have preferred I not be. They certainly weren't going to take time to answer an email from me. But when people in their community said, hey, thank you for what you're doing, we appreciate it, would you please do this? They instantly started caring. They started answering the phones, answering the emails, and good things are starting to happen because of it.
I love that. And we have actually a really good question in the chat from an advocate that I want to throw out here because I want to make sure we have time for it. And I think it's a problem a lot of people face who want to do this work, but we haven't done it before, right? We're not seasoned on this. And it's what do I ask my local officials? If you don't know anything about politics, like how do you know what pets in your local area need and how do you get started?
Well, first, everyone should go, hopefully they should go to our dashboard. If you haven't been to bestfriends.org, because we make all of the data public for every shelter. So know your data. And that can help inform where you might have a problem. So I would start there. If we don't have data for that shelter, please reach out. We actually have an entire volunteer team that works to help gather data. So we need your help on that if we don't have data. But I would say first, look at the data. Then hopefully if you don't have your own personal sort of knowledge or awareness of what the problems might be as it relates to shelter animals in your community, I guarantee you other people do, and I would join them. There might even be an action team in your community. I'm sure Keiko is going to put that in the chat. So join an action team and find out what are your neighbors working on. Join an effort that probably already exists. If it doesn't exist, you can start one yourself, and we can help you with those community conversations. But I guarantee you that there's probably already a group who is identified. I have yet to stumble upon a community where there isn't already a formed group, even if it's just a loose neighborhood coalition working to help shelter pets in their community. And they probably know a lot already on the ground. So I would tap into that group, and I would say, if you can't find them, we'll help you find them. And if they're looking for leadership, we'll help it make it possible that you can step up. But once you have that data, I mean, then once you have that information, it's very easy to start talking to your local elected official, because I think Eric mentioned earlier in the call, no one disagrees that the standard industry practice business model of taxpayers funding to round up animals just to kill them isn't a good business model. You are the taxpayer. So you are paying for a system that is broken. So you have an investment. You have a say as a taxpayer that this is not working for our community, and it's not getting the outcomes that I expect, life-saving outcomes that I expect. So gather your new friends and visit with your city council, your county commissioner, and start those conversations. And by the way, we can help you with that. We've got all sorts of resources to do that, but it's that simple.
Thanks, Laura. I feel like that dovetails into our next question really well, which is for you, Laura, which is, with your group of friends, with your new group of friends ready to act, why does showing up for issues like this matter so much? Do you have a story that you could illuminate this question?
Well, again, I think Eric mentioned when voters are talking to legislators, they pay attention. And sheer numbers matter. No one person's vote carries more weight than another person. So when your neighbor goes into the ballot box, their vote isn't any more weighted than yours. So the majority wins, right? Elected officials know this. So they start to really pay attention when they see their constituents start to organize and show up in numbers. If they don't hear from you, they assume one of two things. One, you're not interested. You don't have a stake. You don't have an interest in what decision they're making. Or two, people don't really care. In which case, if they're asked to vote on an issue, they're just going to use their own personal opinion if they don't hear from their constituents. So using your voice matters. Showing up speaks even more volumes, because elected officials know people are busy. It's hard to get off work, pick up your kid from daycare, get dinner, whatever it is, and get to that city council meeting that starts at 6 p.m. And they assume for every constituent that shows up that there's 100 more who might be watching on the live link or are paying attention and care. They really do that math, because they know how hard it is to show up. Showing up is huge. And we had a recent experience in Cedar City, Utah. Utah is our home state. We are this close to getting it to no kill, and believe me, we're working really hard to make that happen. But we had a recent opportunity. Actually, hopefully I don't jinx us. I think tonight may be the final vote on our MOU. So all paws crossed in Cedar City, Utah. But we had an opportunity to codify a community CAP program, make it legal, create ordinances that support TNVR, and get that on the books in Cedar City, which really would solve for their biggest gap, being cats, community cats in Cedar City. The city council thought, there was support. We didn't foresee many problems. Lo and behold, it comes for a vote gets tabled because opposition shows up. Now, listen, opposition never lets you know they're going to show up. Why would they do that? That's not judicious. They always surprise you, right? So we got put back on our heels a little bit. Gosh, didn't know they were there. And the legislators, the elected officials, city council really hadn't heard en masse, because the sponsor, the city councilman who was sponsoring this legislation said, I talked to my colleagues, we're good, we don't have any issues. So we realized we did. Thanks to some volunteers that are on this call, I've seen them in the chat, we initiated a texting crew. So we sent out an action alert in Cedar City. We said, everybody, please contact your representatives. But we also said, we need you to show up and we need you to make these phone calls. Please do both. And we, by the way, we text, or I call it phone banking, but no one uses the telephone anymore. So it's really text banking, but we text our supporters. Sometimes you're going to get a text message from one of our volunteers saying, hey, there's an action alert, we need you to take it. And we do that because we know the best open rates, industry standard for nonprofits, the best open rates around 20%. So we can have the most impactful byline on our email and only 20% will probably going to open that email. Well, we couldn't afford for 20% of animal lovers in Cedar City to see this action alert. We need every single person to see that message and to contact their representative. So our volunteers got to texting. Within 24 hours, we received a text message from a city council person asking us to call off the dogs. They moved up the vote a week, and in a quick vote to calm the advocates who were demanding this get passed, without zero opposition, no nays, voted to codify a community CAP program. And then tonight they're approving the MOU with the city shelter. So we've got this one last piece. But yeah, so it really matters. And guess what? I'm grateful that happened, because now everybody got to be a part of a really important victory. And this city council knows that if anybody tries to come in later and dismantle this program, they know better, because the people have spoken and the people showed up en masse as well. So it's just a great story that, listen, your email matters, your phone call matters, you showing up matters big time.
I love that. I think two things that really stood out to me is, well, we do have setbacks, right? And like, we kind of have to rally, and it's really hard when you're invested in something and you think it's a done deal, and you've showed up and you've done your due diligence and you have a setback and you have to rally it together, grab your friends and make that last final hurdle and push it through. So I love that. And I especially loved your 1 to 100 ratio. That is, I mean, that's so impactful. Like, that's mind blowing that you can, in that effort to show up and be there, you can have that much of a profound impact and represent that many people.
just sitting in the audience and, maybe beforehand or afterwards, if you're intimidated to go up to your city council person, I mean, I hope you get past that because they are like just regular people like you, but shoot them an email and say, hey, I was in the audience today. Thanks for your service. This matters to me. Huge. Absolutely
Love
huge.
that.
Just being there is so big.
Love that. So with that, I want to kind of talk a little bit. I think on the news a lot, we hear about federal, right? And depending on where we live, we probably hear a lot about our state issues. But what you're talking about here, Cedar City, that feels very local. So Eric, can you give us like kind of a high level overview of like local, state, federal, and how that impacts us?
Yeah, well, obviously there are times that things will come up at the federal level, and when there is an opportunity at the federal level that we can come in and work on something that's going to affect everything across the country, obviously we're going to do that. We do seek opportunities to work at the state level. Like I mentioned, we had a bill in Texas, and I'm sure we will again this year, and other places. When there are issues that we can go in and we can drive change at the state level, we do that, and we seek those opportunities, and those are great. But the vast majority of the work that gets done is at the local level. And I can't miss an opportunity to talk about this just a little bit. And Laura and Caitlin are going to laugh for those of you on the call because they know what's coming. We have monster turnouts in this country when the president's on the ballot. I mean, everybody wants to vote for the president. We have huge turnouts to vote if there's a heated congressional or United States Senate race. We have good turnouts when the governors are on the ballot and it's a highly contested race, or for the state rep or the state senate. We see the commercials on TV and we hear the commercials on the radio, and everybody gets jazzed up and wants to vote for those folks. That's great. I'm glad people get involved. That's wonderful. However, those people will never have the impact on each of us, on the things we do every single day, that our county commissioners and our city council members do. And not only do our city council members and our county commissioners have the greatest impact on us, they're the ones that have the greatest impact on dogs and cats in shelters, because by and large, they're the ones that can absolutely change the policies that are forcing animals into those shelters and forcing animals to be killed. We don't think about it, the importance of our city council member and our county commissioner. They're the ones that set our local tax rate. They're the ones that fund our schools. They're the ones that fund our infrastructure projects. They're the ones that control the economic and community development dollars that come down from the federal government on how they're going to be spent. They're the ones that fund our local animal shelters. And we had the state rep in the race in Utah, actually where the sanctuary is. The state rep was on a staff call 2 weeks ago, and he talked about this and that and the other. And then he said something, and I just wanted to scream, although would have been no one to hear me, but I just wanted to scream, thank you for saying so. He talked about the people he listens to the most. It's like, I know what's important to the folks in Kanab because I'm talking to your mayor. I talk to your county commissioners, and I talk to your city council members. They're the ones that have their ears. And it's the state reps that have the ear of the congressman, and it's our congressmen that have the ear of the United States Senate, and it's those people that impact the president. So we look at this exactly backwards. Please get involved in the presidential race and campaign at the top of your lungs for your candidate of choice for every office. And above all things, please vote. But if you want to have the most impact on the things we do every single day of our lives and have the most impact on the dogs and cats in your local shelter that we're all fighting so hard to save, get involved at the local level. Get to know your city council member, your county commissioner, vote. I'm going to say that a lot. Please vote, but get to know them. Let them get to know you. it's important.
Thank you, Eric. I think in my background of tracking a bunch of bills and legislation at the federal level and the state level, just the difference in speed of those legislative sessions kind of indicates how important the lower the level gets, the more it will impact your day to day, because
Absolutely.
they are just whipping bills through the legislative session so quickly because it's important to make those changes because they have more of an impact on your day-to-day life. All right, Laura, can you maybe answer a question about, the level of impact of emailing versus calling versus writing, physical letters, and maybe varying degrees of personalization for those, and how someone might build a relationship with a legislator?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'd like to assure people, I know you'll see our action alerts, and sometimes there's a chance sometimes there'll be an opportunity to personalize it. Sometimes there's not. Either way, please know, even the sort of mass, organization generated emails are impactful. What I said before, majority wins. So, I mean, what's great about Best Friends is, we're going to push you to contact, the body that represents you, the people who represent you. But again, you need to use your voice. And at the end of the day, sometimes these legislators are going to say, well, I heard from 10 people in Cedar City that they hate cats. I want them all dead. And I only heard from one person that says that cats bring them joy in their life. So I'm gonna go vote for, against the cats. I mean, that's a sad example, but so I just want to assure people, because I know people see the mass emails and I think, if I click this button, isn't even going to matter. Yes, it matters. Please. We wouldn't be asking you if it didn't. That said, if there is an opportunity to personalize, the more personalization, the greater the punch, the more your message will be remembered. Again, sometimes we're just pushing for numbers. Sometimes we really want a certain message to be remembered, but it's never a bad idea to personalize if you have the time. And I'd also pick up the phone and call as well. Do both, please. You can only vote once, but you can send the email and make a phone call. And you can show up, as I mentioned. Again, you don't have to put yourself on the agenda. You don't have to speak to the city council, but just be there, be present, listen to the conversation, hear who is a natural ally who cares about the community, maybe the issues that you care about. And it's okay to wear different hats. You care about lots of things. Get to know your city council person, and there's never a bad time for that. A lot of these city council, reach out to them and ask if they're having neighborhood meetings. Most of them, if they're smart, they already have some sort of like community coffee built into their schedule as a way to get to know the people that they represent. But if they don't, reach out and ask for a meeting and just talk to them about what impacts you in your neighborhood and what you care about. You don't have to go there with all the solutions. That's their job. They're supposed to be in the business of finding solutions, but you're the one who is experiencing the problem. And that's what you need to be sharing. So, again, as personal as possible is going to be as memorable. But at the end of the day, if you have 10 seconds to click an email, please do it and know that matters too.
I love that. And it reminds me too that I did want to make sure that everybody on this call knows that we have a team here. We have legislative attorneys who go through, they pay attention to the laws, they pay attention to the bills, they pay attention to the really boring memos about what is going on at the local level that impact you and that impact cats and dogs. So if you are not political, but you care, make sure that you're on our list. Like, make sure that you get our advocacy emails and text messages if you like to text, because we will let you know. We will pay attention to that, and we will tap you and let you know when things are going on locally, so that you can do this, so that you can make a call, so that you can email. And we are running a little close on time, so I want to make sure that we get to this question because I think it's important. And I also think it's kind of exciting because people do want to get invested. They want to get involved, especially locally on a local level. So many of us are plugged into cat and dog issues, but we're also plugged into human issues and just making our communities the place that we want to live and, raise our families. So what are some other ways that our advocates can get involved in local government that we might not think about?
Well, I saw some Texans are on this call. So you should know something unique about Texas. I'm not sure if this exists in other state statutes, but in Texas, it's actually required that every local government have an animal advisory committee that informs it of animal policies. So if you live in Austin, Texas, there's an Austin Animal Advisory Committee, and this is made of citizens that are not elected. They're appointed. By the way, they're appointed by their city council representative. So again, hope you get to know them first. And that is an advisory body of citizens in the neighborhood who are meant to funnel up and kind of inform the city council or the county commission on best practices for animal policy. So find out if you have one, no matter where you live, if there's an animal advisory committee. If there's not, you could start one. And we'd be happy to help you do that. But if there is, apply and get yourself on there. So that's one way. Eric, do you want to mention some other ways people can get involved?
Absolutely. One of the things that people can do to get more involved is, especially this time of year, go to campaign events. We talk about, you need to get to know your city council member, get to know your county commissioner. One of the easiest ways to do that is show up when they're having a campaign event. And believe me, politicians want you there. They want to know that you care. They want to know that you're interested. They want to know that they have a chance to earn your vote. So that's the best time to introduce yourself to them, to talk about their issues. They're going to pay attention because they're going to be asking you for something too. So it's so easy to get to know them and show up at campaign events. That's one thing that you can do. And the other thing is, there are so many boards and commissions for every city, for every county. Getting to know these folks and just tell them, hey, I have an interest in this, or I have an interest in that, or I just want to help. What can I do? Believe me, they will give you something to do. You say, I want to help, they will give you something to do because they want to make you a part of what they're doing. That's what politicians do. So, it's not taking advantage of them. It's not using them. It's actually giving them what they're asking for. And that's your time, your effort, your service, your participation. And it's only going to make your community better.
Another thing that is recently became very near and dear to my heart, because I moved into a new neighborhood. And if you're like me, maybe you didn't read the 5,361 pages in your property owner association documents. But so, if you've ever bought a house, you're in closing and you're signing a lot of papers and you're not reading a lot. My property owner association bans certain large breed dogs just like a lot. And again, it's what we said, the more local the governing body and the rules, the more it impacts your daily life. If you have an HOA or a POA, some of those tell you how many flower pots you can have on your front doorstep. So I guarantee you that is impacting your life. Get on your board of your homeowners association and your property owners association. Get rid of ridiculous breed specific laws. I am not kidding you. My property owners association says the type of dog has to be commonly sold in a regional mall. So anyways, clearly slightly outdated language in my POA documents. But anyhow, get involved. The more local you can represent, the smaller the group that represents, whatever community or locality that is, the more it's going to impact you and your animals and the animals in your community. So there are so many ways to get involved.
That's awesome. Thank you, Laura. Okay, so we're almost at time. So we did want to share some resources with you. And I know there's a lot on this topic that people have questions that we didn't get to. You can always email us at action2025@bestfriends.org. Questions, thoughts, if you want any of the resources that we talked about on this call and couldn't follow it in the chat, feel free to email us. This is our last call of 2022. So we'll give everybody the end of the year. You know, we all have to have busy lives, and we'll kick back up in January. But we did want to leave you with the request to check your voter status. You know, take this call to heart. Think about how you can engage locally. We have a resource on here. Which one is it? The very bottom. Check your voter registration and find polling places. And, you know, connect with your local representatives. Make a commitment to find a local representative and just reach out to them. And this is a great time because a lot of these people are getting, you know, we have elections coming up. Wait until after elections and reach out and just introduce yourself and start to kind of make that commitment to do what you can. Sign up for an action alert, and stay in touch with us and let us know how things are going, and we will keep you guys updated. Any last words from our panelists, or Keiko, anything we need to cover?
Nice, Laura. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I think, you know, the vote.org tool is really important to plan your ballot as well. You can see exactly what's going to be on your ballot, what you'll be voting for, do your research, while we don't have a huge database of everyone's stances on animal issues, that's a great opportunity for you to reach out to whoever you're voting for to figure out how they feel about animal issues, how they feel about, certain issues that you may care about. So this is the prime opportunity to start building those relationships. And then, of course, after the election, no matter who wins, continue to build that relationship, start that relationship so that you can, really foster a sense of trust between you and your city council members, your legislators, so that you can help advise them on animal issues. Laura, Eric, any final words?
Vote. If you don't remember anything else,
my favorite saying is
vote.
Not voting is like having a dinner party and letting someone else set the guest list. So you got to live with these people and they're going to make a lot of decisions on your behalf. So they're basically going to be in your house making a lot of decisions. So might as well get involved in who's going to be there.
Thank you so much. We appreciate both of your guys' knowledge on this subject and taking the time to chat with us this evening.
Thank you so much.
Bye,
Good night,
everybody.
everyone.